Alright, I'm just making video proof of my last job with White Mountain Air. Some problems went wrong, and I want to make video proof for this. I got all my thoughts down on paper, so I'll be looking at this while I'm talking. Just want to document proof before everything goes a little hazy after a while and I get some of the dates wrong. Today is May 23rd, 11:34 p.m. I actually quit working Friday. What day was that? The 20th? I quit working Friday, May 20th, in the afternoon, about 7:30 at night. Alright, so April, I'm just pretty much going to go through the whole list. I got everything in order as much as I possibly could. My name's Ryan Atkinson. I worked for White Mountain Air for about 7 weeks. I started April 5th, 2016. I had a job interview. Now, I don't know too many people's last names. If I do know their last name, I'll go ahead and say it. But they're pretty hazy and pretty sketchy on some of that stuff. So April 5th, 2016, I had a job interview with Dave, I don't know his last name, and Joe, the owner of the company, Joe Orlando. 6:30 p.m. It was actually in a hotel in Cheektowaga, New York. I'm not going to give the actual name of the hotel, so people don't, end up going there or anything, people that see this video. But that would be they call their main hub or their office, so they called it. Reason being is because Dave lives in Boston, Massachusetts, and Joe lives in Albany, New York, right outside Albany, somewhere in that area. Dave would take a train from Boston to Albany and then ride with Joe. Joe would drive to Buffalo, New York. So April 5th, 2016, 6:30 p.m. I have the interview with them. It lasts about 45 minutes. I then drive home at 8:30 p.m. Joe calls me that night and he asked me if I can meet him tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning to go on a job. So I said sure. So April 6th, never forget that day because it's my mom's birthday. April 6th, I had the first job. Dave and Joe were there, and they actually brought two other guys with them as well, Aaron and Richard. Aaron's last name is Stanley. Richard, I have no idea. So we had Dave, Joe, Aaron, Richard, and myself show up at this house. We did one job that day. It took quite a while with three guys, us not knowing what we're doing. It took a lot longer. Normally we have two jobs in one day. Next is Joe. When he was asked, I asked him, how's the payment work and everything? How do we get paid here? He says that the payment is 30% of what the customer pays. So when Aaron, Richard, and myself were talking, we determined, okay, well, it's 30% of what this customer is paying today, so we all split that. We each make 10%. And it made sense to us. But then, probably about 4 days later, Joe actually, it definitely wasn't the same day, quite a few days later, Joe says, well, actually, it's only 25% for the first 3 months. That's your probation period. Then you get a $500 sign-on bonus. Then you get bumped up to 30%. So he said, okay, so it's only 25%, so we're splitting 25%. That's fine. It's like 6.25% or whatever. So then we said, okay. Then we went through our entire training, and at the last day of training, Joe actually states, well, actually, you only get training pay. It's training pay is nothing compared to your regular pay as a technician. And as an air duct cleaner with White Mountain Air, you're considered a technician. That's what they call it. So he says it's nothing like getting paid like a tuition. So we say, what's training pay? And he says, well, it's an hourly rate. So we ask, well, what's the rate? He states, oh, well, it's minimal. And so, I mean, we're trying to really push him for it. So we ask, what do you mean by minimal? And he just says, oh, well, I'll have to check. And, it didn't make any sense to us. He doesn't even know what he's going to pay us, and yet we've been here for a week. It doesn't make any sense. Days later, my girlfriend's brother, Jeremiah Kohlbacher, he's hired. He was hired on April 12th. So Joe states, so now we have Aaron Stanley, Richard, myself, Ryan Atkinson, and Jeremiah Kohlbacher all working. Jeremiah didn't have any interview or anything. I asked on April 7th if if they would, since they were looking for a fourth person, I know somebody, and can we bring him in? So they said, yeah, but wait till next week. So they actually didn't get back into town from Albany and Boston, Massachusetts, until Tuesday morning. So that's when they asked if Jeremiah could come there. So I brought him. He just said, all right, let's go to the first job. And that was it. He had no interview. He didn't fill out any paperwork whatsoever, no application, no, they didn't even know his name or anything like that. They just brought him on a job. And it was like that for the first 3 days, and then he finally filled out some paperwork. Let's see, so he was hired April 12th. Joe states after he was pressured, after we asked him a lot, what is training pay? What do you mean by minimal? He finally says that training pay is minimum wage. And he didn't even know what minimum wage was here. He further explains that training generally... I didn't write this down, but I should mention it. Minimum wage is $9 an hour here in Western New York. But he further explains that training generally lasts only a week. Then we are out on our own making 25%. So he says, it could be a week, it could be a week and a half. We will never stretch it to 2 weeks. If you're still in training after that long, we're going to get rid of you because you're not getting it. So he says, but generally a week to a week and a half, and we get you out there on your own with equipment, going out there and working. Then you'll be making 25% of whatever the customer pays. We are in charge of running the estimates, so we're marking up the prices at the appropriate levels of what the company tells us, and we are discussing with customers why they need this done. And when they say no, I'm not going to pay that much, we have to try to re-justify why they need to. And if they still say no, we call Dave. His position with the company is to give them a discount and basically hope for the best. That's pretty much all Dave does. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Let's see. So Aaron, Richard, Jeremiah, and myself, we did training on-site jobs. So we're going to the customer's house and doing jobs from April 12th to April 15th. Now, Aaron, Richard, and myself, we started from April 6th until that's 14th. Let me make sure that's right here. I have a calendar right here. April 14th. April 6th to April 14th was Aaron, Richard, and myself doing on-the-job, on-site trainings. No in-class training yet. April 12th to the 15th was Jeremiah's, along with Aaron, Richard, and myself. We're doing 2 jobs a day, except for the very first day on April 6th. We did one, as I stated earlier. April 14th, that should be 15th. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, April 14th, we had our in-class training. So April 6th to the 13th, we had our on-site job training. Excuse me, I apologize for that. And then Jeremiah's was April 12th and 13th, on-site, on-job training. April 14th, we had our in-class training. It lasted from 7:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night. 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. The days before that were generally 12-hour days. Sometimes it would only be 11. Sometimes it would be a little more than 12. The average was about 12 hours a day. The other one is 14 hours for 1 day of training, in-class training. Joe then tells us that we will now be teams of 2 and go do jobs on our own. So Aaron Stanley and Richard were together. Jeremiah Kohlbacher and Ryan Atkinson, myself, were together as teams instead of actually going out on our own, because they said you might need a little bit of help until you get it. We were fine with that. So Friday on the 15th and Saturday on the 16th, Jeremiah and I did 3 houses together. One lady, I don't know if it was 4. I only remember 3 because I've been in almost 80 houses with this job. But I remember enough. So the first lady, she paid roughly about $525. The second man, he paid $80. And another man, he actually paid, the third job we did was $850. So $525, 80 plus $850 brings it to $1,455 times the 25%, $363.75, and we split that for $181.88. That Saturday after work, or that following Sunday morning, I can't remember which one. Jeremiah actually called Joe And he informed him that he can't work anymore, and he quits. So Joe said, okay, that's fine. He kind of expected it for some reason. I don't know why. But he said he's not really surprised that he was going to quit. And he says, no big deal. We'll find another guy. But those 3 jobs brings us to approximately $181.85 each that Jeremiah Kohlbacher makes and Ryan Atkinson makes for profit in our pocket. What we make from the job, 25% divided by 2. April 12th to the 14th, it's actually 13th, that equaled 38 hours approximately, and that's equaling $342. So $342 for the training pay at $9 an hour plus $181.85 for the 3 jobs that we did together is $523.85. So we keep that number in mind for now. I'll make a point of that later. So Aaron, Richard, Jeremiah, and we all filled out the complete paperwork, everything that Joe gave us. We filled out, signed, everything, turned back into him before going out to any of those jobs alone. 2 weeks later, after Jeremiah quit, 2 weeks later, Aaron Stanley quit, and Richard quit as well because he couldn't run the estimate on his own. He was still having a lot of trouble doing so, but Aaron was good at it, but he decided he was going to go back to his mechanic job. So Joe hires 2 more guys, Bruce and Jeff. He hired them on a Thursday, and he asked me to help train them. So they worked Thursday, and then Friday, Joe returned back to Albany, so they didn't work Friday or Saturday, but I worked alone for 25%. So I thought. They came back Tuesday, so on Tuesday and Wednesday, Tuesday, Bruce and Jeff worked, doing training more, and I was helping them understand the job a little bit more. The entire time, Joe was actually running all the estimates. I wasn't doing any of that. And then that Wednesday, he hired one more guy named Jared. So it was Bruce, Jeff, Jared, and myself, all technicians, along with Joe and Dave, at each customer's house. On that Wednesday, Bruce and Jeff actually, after the first house, they went and asked. They asked Joe. He said, "Hey, we have to get going. When do you want us to meet you in the morning?" And they blew it off and said, "I'll let you know later." And as an employee, asking an employer that, it didn't make any sense, just kind of skipping out halfway through the day and said, "Hey, I got some other stuff to do. I got to go home." So Joe didn't allow them to work anymore because they skipped out through work just halfway through the day. So that Wednesday, Jared and I went to the second house. Jared worked from that Wednesday to Friday, and on that Saturday he went for a doctor's visit because on the Friday we were doing an in-class training. That in-class training, Joe said, well, you might as well come and sit in the in-class training. Maybe you'll learn a little bit more. You're not really in training, though. And I did one job in that morning and then went to the training for the rest of the day. Jared, during that time, was in the in-class training all day like I was, 7:30 a.m. till whenever. It wasn't 9:30 p.m. that day, but it was close to 8 o'clock. I remember it was a 7 o'clock hour. That Friday night, he actually had to keep getting up and running to the restroom. I'm not sure why, but later he told me, and without having any vulgarity here, just say diarrhea. He was having a little bit of problems, and the next day he felt like, he told Joe that he felt like someone was constantly kicking and stabbing him in the stomach. So he had to go to the hospital and get it checked out. He got a doctor's visit and found out what was going on. So the following Monday, he returned to work, and he worked all the way throughout the week, Monday to Saturday. White Mountain Air does 6 days a week. He finished all throughout the time. Joe had me train him, and he also told me I'm just reading what I wrote down here. I should sit in on his in-class training because I might learn something. Like I said before, he doesn't say it doesn't mean necessarily you're in training, but you might learn something. So all throughout that week, that Monday to Saturday, we did 2 jobs each and every day. Jared went to the hospital for surgery after that. That following Monday, he had to go get surgery. And Joe was asking him, when are you going to be back? And he said, you can give me till May 24th. And he said, okay. And then later when I asked Joe about it, Joe said, well, I think he's just trying to juggle in between two jobs. There's no way he's in the hospital with surgery. And the problem with Jared was, and what he told Joe was that they found 2 holes in his intestines, so it was letting too much stuff through, and they were clogging him, and he had inflamed intestines. And so he had to get surgery to fix that. It sounds like a very major issue. And Joe, I guess being a doctor or something, says, well, there's no way that's happening to him because he would just die immediately. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't believe him. I'm done with him. Jared is a good friend of mine. After we met, even though I haven't known him that long, we swapped phone numbers. We keep in touch, and he was telling me, giving me updates about everything that was happening. The surgery went well, and that Joe was really pestering him and bothering him with multiple phone calls and text messages every single day. Even though he was induced and put to sleep for surgery, he couldn't answer. And then Joe finally said, I'm done with you. You're not working here anymore. You're fired. So he fired him just simply because he was having surgery, because he couldn't come into work that day. But being an at-will employee, you can be fired anytime you want to, but it still just didn't seem right. Joe also told me he didn't want a lying sack of shit working for him that's just going to take days off like that. Then after that, Joe, the next week on that Monday, Joe brings his friend Paul from Albany. On Monday, on Monday, May 16th, and he stays in town all week. Now on Thursday, April 19th, he hires Shane. All week he has me train Paul from that Monday, all throughout the week, and then starting on Thursday, Paul and Shane, just teaching them how to clean air ducts and do all that. So all week he has me train both these guys. Friday, May 20th, I actually quit, and I turned in all my equipment to him at his office in the hotel in Cheektowaga. So here's the problems that I started running into that I really noticed. Joe gave me 2 training paychecks. The first one was $250. The second check was $325. We get paid weekly. My calculation for what I was writing down and everything that I should get, the first check should have actually been $432 gross pay, and the second check should have been $631.88 gross pay. Those are a little short for the hours that I worked, since I was working for $9 an hour. Furthermore, and yeah, I could be a little wrong in the hours, I don't know, but nothing constitutes this next one. Jeremiah never got one single penny of that $523.85 that he worked for. Still to this day, May 23rd, 2016, he hasn't been paid one single penny. As I stated before, and I will flip back and restate it, 3 jobs that we split because him and I were alone on the job site running the estimate. We split $181.85 each for those 3 jobs in total. Not per job, but 3 jobs in total. Then the April 12th and 13th of the in-class training and all that was approximately 38 hours, equaling $342. That together is $523.85. Jeremiah never got one single penny. It doesn't matter if you're an employee for 1 day or 10 years, you get paid for what you get paid for. Joe said you get paid $9 an hour during training pay. He didn't say anything about, oh, but it has to be after 2 weeks or after 3 days or 4 or 5 days, whatever. $9 per hour. Jeremiah never got any of his money. My third check was for $625, and Joe actually told me it's low because I had to split it with Aaron, since I did a couple jobs with Aaron, and I also did a couple jobs with Aaron and Richard as well. And I asked about Richard, basically, oh, I had to split it with him too, and he just laughed and said no. So that constitutes that he paid Aaron, and he paid me, but he never paid Richard. after Jared worked from Wednesday, May 4th to Friday, May 13th, or Saturday, May 14th, it's now Monday, May 23rd, and Joe has not paid Jared any money whatsoever. Payouts are weekly and follows 2 weeks back. So you get your first paycheck basically when you start your third week. You get paid out every Monday, they said. He was kind of shady on that as well. We couldn't figure out which day we'd actually get money. I say, Joe, when do we get our paychecks? He says, oh, you get them every week. So, well, what day of the week? He goes, sometime in the beginning of the week. I mean, he couldn't even give us an honest answer. So they follow 2 weeks back. It's been 3 weeks since he started, and he still doesn't have any money. He should have been paid 7 days ago. Today's Monday. He should have been paid last Monday for his first check. He never got any money at all. No last names were given to me whatsoever, but I know Joe's last name is Orlando. After doing research, looking up on, basically found him on Facebook, looked up White Mountain Air. I knew his name was, I couldn't find out anything on, who the owner was. We were in one customer's house, and the customer actually, asked, well, who's the owner? And he said, well, the last name's Orlando. And that was his answer. He wouldn't give an answer of the owner because he didn't want to state that he was the owner. He doesn't want customers to know that he's the owner while he's in their house, because then something would go wrong, basically. So he was really, really shady on that. So I did research, found out, said, well, his name is Joe, maybe his last name is Orlando, and I looked him up, and boom, there's his picture on his profile. And he's also partnered with some guy named Dave. He's in charge with lowering estimate offers. So basically, Dave, I don't know his last name, the guy from Boston, Massachusetts. Basically, he's the one that interviewed me. Joe just kind of sat around on the side. Dave asked me all the questions. Dave was in charge of training. He stated a couple things in the end on the on-site training. Just say, block off the return vents. Hit that motor good and well, or whatever. And after that, he would basically do the in-class training, teaching you how to talk and run through the estimate and explain everything. And then after that, as you go out on your own, if you have a problem and the customer says no, whenever you're presenting them with an $850 estimate or whatever they say no to, you call Dave and you re-explain what you're offering, what needs to be done, system, the condition it's in, the price, and that it's a little more than they're willing to invest. We can't say spend. And then so Dave says, all right, well, we'll bring $850 down to $775, and then we'll throw this in for free. Can we do that? And then if the customer says yes, great. If they say no, then we try to work with it more and more, and then that's pretty much Dave's position. You get it. So Joe is in charge of booking lots of appointments. When he's not in Albany, he carries a cell phone with him that, it has the Buffalo area code number. So when they're calling from Buffalo to book an appointment, they're calling this certain 716 number. So it's actually a cell phone. He says, oh, I forward it to my cell phone, but it's the actual cell phone. It's a separate one from his personal cell phone, and he always has it in his pocket. So he's in charge of booking lots of appointments. He consistently told me that he confirmed with a customer last night, and I need to be there at 8 a.m. Upon arriving, the customer tells me I wasn't expected since they called the office several times and never got an answer. And once again, the office is Joe's cell phone. So I'll state this on one of the last jobs that I did. Joe called me at 6:30 in the morning. We talked. I said, okay, well, I'm ready to go or whatever. He said, look, you need to be at this customer's house at 8 a.m. That last customer that we had last week, this is his daughter. So he's expected to, he knows what's going to go on. But I called last night and confirmed with this customer, and she needs us there at 8 a.m. sharp because she has some stuff to do in the early afternoon. So we need to get this done as soon as possible. I said, yeah, no problem. I'll be there at 8. I was there at 7:55. I knocked on the door. She had no idea who I was. and I said, "Oh, I'm from White Mountain Air Duct Cleaners. I'm here to clean up the air ducts. We had a booking appointment to show up at between 8 and 10 today." She goes, "Oh, well, I tried to call your office like 10 times yesterday, and I tried to call them this morning too, and nobody answered. I couldn't get a hold of anybody." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, I have a dentist appointment to go to, so I really can't do this today." And I said, "Oh, well, would you like to reschedule with us? I can try to call our office right now and book a rescheduling date for you so we can get this taken care of for you." And she says, "Well, hold on. I'll call my parents and have them come over. Would you mind waiting about 10 or 15 minutes? Would that be okay?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I called Joe and said, "Hey, nobody ever called to confirm with this lady, and she tried to call multiple times yesterday." And what he did was tell her, "Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe our office messed up a little bit. I'll get that straightened out with them." The office is Joe's cell phone. He personally told me that he talked to this lady last night, and he never did. And that's not the only time. He's done that multiple times. "You need to be there right at 8 a.m. At 8 a.m. And I go and knock on the door, and they're surprised I'm there. Nobody ever called to confirm. What happened? I'm not sure. That's just a little mix up with management. I had to just basically BS it. It made no sense whatsoever. On top of that, Dave would constantly send me the wrong addresses and the wrong names and the wrong phone numbers because he just couldn't spell right or something. He would take a picture, and it's not just texting with autocorrect. He would take a picture of the work order and send it to me, and stuff was written down by hand in the wrong manner. It sends me the wrong address, which is 20 minutes across town, and then I'm late for the appointment, and then I get yelled at for being late. It makes no sense. Learn how to write, double check your work. Back on track here. When Bruce and Jeff started, Joe wanted me to teach them how to do the work. Joe would then rush, and he would do the estimate with the customer. So he stuck, and this was something I wasn't aware about until a few days before I quit. So without me doing the estimate, he would actually stick me back to $9 an hour, since I'm not the one running the estimate. It makes no sense. When Jared started, he did the same thing. So I got $9 an hour to help him train new employees instead of 25% of what I was making before. More work on my hands, and he drops me down to minimum wage. I counted up my week's worth of jobs in 1 week. I unfortunately didn't write down the date. This was after Aaron and Richard quit, and before he hired Bruce and Jeff. It included an Indian family in Williamsville, New York, for a total of $700. And a lady in a trailer home for approximately $80, and then I remember another lady named Jolie in Amherst, New York, and a apartment or condo. They're kind of the same, apartment condos. That was for, I believe, like $75, $78. It was during that week. It would show in their records as well when that was done. So with all the other jobs that I did, my gross pay should have been $851 for the week. What I actually did was, after every job, I went through the paperwork, I wrote it down, multiplied it by 25% to see basically what my check would look like for the week. What most people would do because they get excited. I did that, and it totaled up to be about $851 for the week. This was in between Aaron and Richard quitting and Bruce and Jeff working. Joe gave me that $625 paycheck that I had to split with Aaron that I mentioned earlier. I split it with Aaron, and then I asked him, what about Richard, and he just laughed and said no. So he gave me that $625 paycheck that I had to split with Aaron, and then the next paycheck he gave me was for $525, and he said it was for one job that I did alone and my retraining with Jared. So he completely skipped over a week that I did jobs alone. It makes no sense. So I never got paid the $851 gross pay. He just completely skipped that week. I didn't catch it until later. So, there was a lot of big jobs that I did for $800, $500 ranges and everything. He never paid me for. But anytime he brought new people to hire and train, he wanted me to help them train so they understand the job while he wrote up the paperwork for his findings because he was the big time expert because he's been doing this for a while. Then he would present the estimate to the customer. He would strike up a deal, call Dave, do his clock-in call, they call it, to where Dave gives him the discount. And he would take care of all that while I'm helping the other guys do the work. And he never told me that I was going to be on retraining pay. He never told me that without running the estimate. I'm on a different pay or back to $9 an hour training pay. He never informed me one single time that was going to happen. Whenever I was help training Jared, and he gave me that paycheck and said, "This is for that one job that you did alone, and your retraining pay." But during that time, he says, "Well, you're not in training. You're just. I just think that you would really learn something by sitting in and listening a little bit more." And then later he said, "Yeah, this is your retraining pay." It makes no sense. So he's cheated out a lot of people. He told me he didn't pay Richard. Told me he didn't pay Bruce or Jeff. He definitely didn't pay Jeremiah. I mean, that's my girlfriend's brother. We see each other almost every day, and he's still wondering, like, hey, when am I going to get money? He never paid Jared. These two new guys, I don't know if they'll ever get paid. It makes no sense to me. He's hired 9 guys in the past 8 weeks, and he has 1 guy left now. I mean, it's horrible. Last thing I have here in my notes is that just something it's not really a bother. It's just something that doesn't add up to show that he's a real BSer. Joe told me that the business is 13 years old. So it's 13 years old. He does business in New Hampshire, New York State, and apparently Massachusetts. He has 1 guy that he told me in New Hampshire working right now. He brought Paul, as I stated earlier, from Albany. He brought Paul over to Buffalo here to train while he was here because he wants him to do some work up in New Hampshire and Albany. He said that in Albany, he was the only one really doing the work in Albany because he had no other employees. But he broke his ankle in January, so he had to put that on hold to restart his Buffalo location because he had a few guys working here, and then apparently he said he fired them because they weren't making the company enough money. Yeah, so he says the business is 13 years old, and basically he has 2 employees in 3 states. Nobody's in Massachusetts. That makes no sense whatsoever. But he also told me that he's 30 years old. So he had to have been 17 years old when he started his business, which I guess, you probably could do. But he also says that he worked for quite a few years as a technician for another company, and he was working with a guy. I never caught his name. I asked him what his name is. And he said, "Oh, it's that flyer you got in the mail. It's him." I said, "Yeah, but what's his name?" And he's just like, he's blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't even say his name, so I don't know. All I know is he's a Middle Eastern man. Joe and Dave are very, very, very racist guys. He called him a camel jockey. So he says that he was working with him with a different company. I don't know that company's name either. Joe wouldn't tell me. The Middle Eastern man would then open his own company after he came into some money, and he offered Joe a job. Joe said he worked for him for 3 years and then realized that he wasn't paying him correctly or something like that. So Joe quit and opened up his own air duct cleaning business, White Mountain Air. So that would make him like 10, maybe 12 years old when he started working and became a air duct cleaning technician, which I don't know too many 10-year-olds that work. So all in all, it was a pretty rough experience. I got screwed out of thousands of dollars that I should have been paid. My paychecks were botched. He only paid 2, maybe 3 workers out of the 9 people that have been working here. The company's name is White Mountain Air. The owner is Joe Orlando. He's partnered with a guy named Dave, who apparently owns 5 different air duct cleaning companies throughout the U.S. and does the same thing with each one. Runs these estimate discounts and everything. So I would recommend to definitely stay away from this job. They're not going to pay you. They're not going to do anything correctly. You'll be working over 70 hours a week at least. To do 2 jobs a day, they would really love it if you could do a third job, but there's just not enough time. You get to the first customer's house at 8 a.m., you're not leaving until about noon. You get to the next customer's house, it's usually scheduled between 12 and 3, so you got to get there immediately. And then you're pretty much done with that one at about 6, at least. And then after that, they want you to meet them back at the hotel so you could talk to them, so they could train you a little bit more or whatever. So basically, you're looking at, meet them at 7 a.m. and then leave at 8 p.m., 6 days a week. And you're looking at the paychecks which I just described. Your first paycheck for $250, second one for $325, for basically 80 hours in that 1 week. And then you finally get 1 day off, and then after that, it's back at it again. They screw you around a little too much. It just, the numbers don't add up and they don't make any sense. Upon that, what I've actually found is that they're based in Amsterdam, New York, right outside of Albany. Apparently they have an office, and with multiple phone lines and like this big corporate office. That's what Joe talks about and what he actually told us. But when he brought his friend Paul over, Paul has known him for about 3 years. Apparently Joe Orlando is a race car driver, does the whole track with the race car and everything. Paul built him his race car. And so Paul's known him for 2 or 3 years, and whenever I called in for one credit card to be ran, and a lady answered the phone, and I ran a credit card just like I usually do. They give you an authorization number afterwards, and he says, "Who was that? That wasn't Joe, that was some girl." I said, "Yeah, I called the office." And he goes, "Office? He doesn't have an office." I said, "Yeah, he gives me this office phone number and everything." He goes, "No, he doesn't have an office." So, basically being ran out of his house, but he's lying to you, saying, "I have an office, multiple phone lines with a ton of employees over there." On another note, he basically, the advertisement, the way it works is they send you the little flyers in the mail, and I wish I had one right on me, but I don't. They're somewhere. But you get them in the mail. So they send them, mass mail throughout every house throughout Erie County, Niagara County, a little bit in Wyoming County, over here in western New York. So every house gets them. They do the same thing in New Hampshire. They do the same thing over in Albany. And they're looking to expand in Rochester as well, even though they don't have any employees and they can't keep any employees because they don't treat them right. So every house gets this little flyer. Now, what Joe at first, he said that they spend $500,000 a month in advertising, so they really need to get their customer base up a little bit more to meet their costs, because right now they're losing a little bit of money. When I added the numbers up, and I'm making $1,000 a day for the company, and I get $250 of that, and they have one other guy in New Hampshire that's making $1,000 a day for the company. You're looking at $12,000 a week. You're looking at, $50,000 a month, but you're spending $500,000 a month. It makes no sense for a 13-year-old company. That doesn't make any sense. So he actually then stated, well, we actually spend not $500,000, $50,000. So you make no money at all. Every single penny that you make and you're paying out to us, you still got a little more in advertising than what your entire company is making in revenue. That makes no sense, because you have all these employees at this corporate office, so they're working for free. So you're not paying them at all? It makes no sense. So then he says, no, it's tens and 20s of thousands of dollars a month in advertising. So who knows? He's throwing these numbers around everywhere. He's not making any sense. He's giving just false accusations about everything. So Joe Orlando, White Mountain Air, has not paid me the correct amount of money. He has shortchanged me by hundreds and thousands of dollars. Hundreds of dollars on every single paycheck and thousands of dollars overall. I worked there from April 6th until May 20th, and I hardly made any money. I never made the amount of money that I was supposed to. He never paid my girlfriend's brother Jeremiah Kolbacher. Out of that $500+ he never got one single penny. Jared worked for an entire 2 weeks and did multiple jobs with me alone on job sites, and he never got any of that money. On top of that, he told me, training, you do 1 week and then you're out on your own, but he kept pulling me back to $9 an hour instead of the 25%. First he told me 30%, no, it's actually 25%, and then he actually told me, and I forgot to mention this earlier, no, it's 20% to 25% depending on how good of a job you do. But if he's not there, how does he know if you did a good job or not? It doesn't make any sense. Then he would rush and do the estimate, so I couldn't, because he told me, go and train these guys. And then he would run out, fill out the paperwork real quick, run in and talk to the customer, and then by the time I walk up there, he's sitting down talking to the customer. So I got screwed out of payment. He skipped an $851 gross paycheck and stuck me with something a lot lower. He didn't even mention that week. He said, oh, the first paycheck was, well, you had to split this with Aaron. It's too bad that you had to, that in his words, that fat motherfucker quit on us out of nowhere, and that's some bullshit. Didn't even give us a 2 weeks notice, but I still have to send him his money, even though I really don't want to. And I said, oh, well, what about Richard? Because I worked a few with him. He goes, no. Okay. And then the next check after that, hey, this is that one job that you did on your own, and then you're retraining with Dave and I and Jared, Bruce, and Jeff. So what happened that week in between where I did an $851 week for a paycheck for myself, 25%? I made you a lot of money, $4,000 in that 1 week, just about. That's pretty good, and I didn't get it. So, yeah, all in all, that is the entire statement and record of everything that I have and that I can recall. Like I said, I just wanted to have this as video proof, so I remember all the dates and numbers right now since it just happened just a few days ago. So, yeah.